Hey everyone, and welcome back. So today we're diving into a book that makes a pretty bold claim.
Oh, yeah.
It says it can help us all navigate a world full of idiots.
A world we all know too well, right?
Right. The book is called Surrounded by Idiots. And honestly,
Catchy title.
it is. It really grabs you.
For sure.
And I think no matter what you do, whether you're,
Oh, yeah.
getting ready for some big meeting at work or just trying to figure out your coworkers or, even just your family.
Oh, absolutely.
Why are these people like this? This deep dive might give you some new ways to see them.
I think it might actually change how you see everyone around you.
Totally.
And is a big claim, I know.
It is.
But what I find so interesting is that the whole system,
Yeah.
this way of understanding personality and how we talk to each other, it all came from, wait for it, a question about selling seed.
Like agricultural seed.
Yeah, like farming?
That's wild. We'll get to that story, though.
We will, don't worry.
But first, get ready for some color coding.
Ooh, colors.
Because that's how this book breaks down personality types.
Yeah.
And who doesn't love a good visual?
Right? Colors are just so easy, you know?
Right. They make it so much easier to remember.
Exactly. And in this case, the colors are like a framework, a starting point to think about why people act the way they do. And more importantly, how to actually talk to them in a way that gets through.
Okay, so the book starts with this idea, and it's kind of mathy.
A little bit.
It says, behavior equals F, personality X, surrounding factors. What does that even mean?
Well, in simple terms, it means we're all a mix of nature and nurture.
Okay.
Our personalities come partly from who we are deep down, but also from everything around us,
Like our environment?
Exactly. Our experiences, the people we're with all the time.
So it's not just about labeling someone as red or blue and that's it.
Definitely not. And I think that's where the book's title can be a little misleading.
It does kind of make it sound like everyone's an idiot.
Right. But that's not about that. It's about understanding that what we might see as idiotic behavior is maybe just a mismatch in communication styles.
That makes sense. We're not on the same wavelength.
Exactly.
Okay, so we have this equation, this idea that who we are and what's around us affects how we act.
Yeah.
But what can we actually do with that information?
Well, here's the powerful part.
Okay.
We can't change someone's core personality.
Right.
But we can control, at least to some extent, those surrounding factors.
Oh, interesting.
And that means we can change how WE communicate.
I see. So we adapt to the other person.
Exactly. So we can better connect with different types of people.
Okay. I like that. It makes it feel more actionable. I can actually do something.
Totally.
Especially, at work or even in my personal relationships.
Oh, for sure. Anywhere you're dealing with people.
Right. So let's break down these color-coded personality types. The book talks about reds, yellows, greens, and blues.
A whole rainbow of personalities.
I know. Where do we even start with this?
Well, let's start with red, the classic red.
Okay.
The key thing with reds is that they are driven by results.
Results?
Yes. Efficiency, action, getting things done.
Like super locus.
Exactly. Imagine a CEO who walks into a meeting and immediately cuts to the chase, makes a decision right then and there.
Oh, I know the type.
That's classic red energy.
You mentioned a CEO.
I did.
Didn't the book have a story about a CEO and a soccer match?
Oh, it did. The author was describing this CEO who was playing in a company soccer game, and he was so focused on winning that he basically ignored any idea of teamwork or sportsmanship. It was all about the win.
That's rough, but I guess it illustrates the point.
It does. It perfectly shows how a red's desire to succeed can sometimes overshadow other things.
So their strengths are leadership, getting things done, being decisive.
Yes, very much so.
But what about the flip side? What are some things that could be a problem for a red?
Well, because they are so focused on results, they can sometimes come across as insensitive.
Okay.
Or even ruthless. They might not think much about emotions.
Oh, so like a bull in a china shop.
Kind of. They can bulldoze over people to get to their goal.
And you mentioned that reds might overlook details.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a big issue in certain professions? What about a surgeon who's a red?
That's a great question, and it really highlights why context is so important.
Okay.
Even within a color, there's a whole range of behavior, you know?
It's not that simple.
Not at all. So a red surgeon might be incredibly meticulous during the actual surgery.
When it matters most.
Exactly, but maybe less patient with the aftercare or bedside manner.
Oh, interesting. Like, it depends on the situation.
Exactly. It's all about the nuances.
So we can't just slap a color label on someone and think we know everything.
Definitely not. There's always more to it.
All right, we've got the reds, the action-oriented, results-driven folks.
Mm-hmm.
Who's next on our color wheel?
Let's move on to yellows.
Okay, tell me about yellows.
So yellows, they thrive on connection.
Connection.
And enthusiasm. They're optimistic.
The glass half full people.
Always. Full of energy. And they love to build relationships.
Oh, they're the networkers.
Definitely. And they spread positivity wherever they go.
It's like they have this infectious energy.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine the person who comes into the office with a huge smile, ready to chat with everyone.
And always has a story.
Oh, for sure. Always a story to tell. That's yellow energy in action.
That's true, but I've also seen yellows be incredibly focused.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like when they're really passionate about a project. Could it be that their, like, scattered energy is just when they're not engaged?
That's a really good point, and it reminds us that these colors, they're just starting points.
Not the whole picture.
Right, not boxes. A yellow's enthusiasm can be super powerful when it's channeled into something they truly care about.
So their strengths are inspiring people, being persuasive, building networks.
For sure, all those things.
But what about the downsides? What could trip up a yellow?
Well, all that energy and optimism can sometimes make them disorganized.
Okay.
Or they might not follow through on things.
Oh, so they jump from one thing to the next?
They can. They get excited about a new idea and then...
they're on to the next shiny thing.
Exactly. And they can be easily distracted.
And they love to talk.
Oh, do they ever? Sometimes they talk more than they listen.
Didn't the book have an example of a yellow who dominated a meeting?
It did.
By, like, answering every question?
Oh, yeah, even when they weren't directed at him.
That's a classic.
It is, but it wasn't that he was trying to be rude.
Right.
It's just their enthusiasm, their need to be heard.
Takes over.
Sometimes it overshadows their ability to read the room.
Oh, yeah. I can definitely see how that could cause some friction.
For sure.
Especially with someone who's more, reserved.
Yeah, who likes things a bit more structured.
Right. So we've got our action-oriented reds, our enthusiastic yellows.
Yep.
Who are our greens?
Greens, they are all about harmony and stability. They want everyone to feel comfortable and valued.
The peacemakers.
Exactly. Think of that friend who always listens, never judges.
And is always willing to help.
Always. Even if it means putting their own needs aside, that's a classic green.
I have a friend like that. She's the most selfless person I know.
They really are.
But she also really struggles with conflict and change.
Yeah, that's very common for greens.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. They love predictability and routine.
They like things to stay the same.
They do. Even small changes can throw them off, and they'll do anything to avoid conflict.
You just want everyone to get along.
Exactly. Keep the peace, even if it means holding back their own feelings.
Wow. So their strengths are being reliable, supportive, creating that sense of calm.
Definitely.
But those same strengths can also become weaknesses.
It's true. Their desire to please everyone can lead to resentment or burnout if they're not careful.
Like they're giving too much of themselves?
Exactly. And because they avoid conflict, they might not speak up about important issues.
Or stand up for themselves.
Exactly.
That makes me wonder, have you ever seen a situation where a green's need for harmony, like, backfired?
Oh, all the time.
Really?
Yeah, like, imagine a green employee who sees something unethical happening at work. But they're too afraid to say anything because they don't want to cause trouble.
Oh, wow.
Their silence, while well-intentioned, could let the problem get even worse.
That's a really good point. Even good qualities can have unintended consequences.
They can. It's all about balance.
Okay, so we've got our reds, our yellows, our greens. Who's left on our color spectrum?
That leaves us with the blues.
Okay, tell me about the blues.
The key thing with blues is that they're driven by logic, accuracy, and a deep desire to understand how things work.
So they're the analytical types.
Very much so. They're all about the details, and they value precision and quality above all else.
Okay, I think I know some blues.
Oh, I bet you do.
They're the ones who research every purchase.
Yes, and they always read the instructions before putting something together.
And they always double-check their work.
Always. That's classic blue behavior.
You mentioned that blues are all about understanding how things work.
Yeah.
Does that mean they're, like, naturally drawn to science and tech?
Not Not necessarily, although a lot of them are.
Okay.
Their analytical minds can be applied to anything that needs precision.
Right. So it's not limited to just one field.
Not at all. You might find a blue who's a musician, a chef, an organizer, anything really.
As long as there's that structure.
Exactly. It's about that need for accuracy.
So their strengths are being thorough, planning, analyzing, and their commitment to quality.
They're the detail people.
For sure. But what could potentially be a problem for a blue?
Well, all that focus on detail
Yeah.
can sometimes lead to, well, paralysis.
What do you mean?
They can get so caught up in the little things
Uh-huh.
that they struggle to make decisions.
Oh, so they overthink it.
They can, and they can be overly critical, both of themselves and others.
And not very open to change.
Right, if it disrupts their carefully crafted systems.
The book gave that example of a blue CEO who needed like 85 pages of info.
Oh yeah, before even considering a proposal.
That sounds like a recipe for frustration.
It can be, especially for someone who's more impulsive.
Like a red who just wants to make a decision.
Exactly, and that's why understanding these different styles is so crucial.
Because what one person sees as a strength,
Yeah.
another person might see as a weakness.
Absolutely. What a red sees as decisiveness, a blue might see as recklessness.
And what a blue sees as thoroughness, a red might see as a waste of time.
Precisely. It's all about perspective.
Okay, so we've met our 4 colors. Reds, yellows, greens, and blues.
A whole spectrum.
I know, but how do we actually use this knowledge? Like, it's not just about putting people in boxes.
No, not at all.
Right.
The real power comes from understanding how to adapt our communication
Right.
to better connect with each type.
I like that.
The book calls it choosing the right frequency.
The right frequency.
Yeah, for the other person.
I have to admit, when I first heard that term, I was a little confused.
I get it.
Like, what does frequency even mean when we're talking about people?
Think of it like tuning a radio to
Yeah.
the right station so you can clearly hear the music.
Okay.
If you're talking to a red, you need to be clear, concise, and focus on the bottom line.
What about with a blue?
You'll need to give them data, logic, a well-organized plan.
So it's not about being fake or pretending to be someone I'm not.
No, not at all.
It's about being more intentional.
Yes. With how I communicate.
Yeah, like understanding that different people respond to different approaches.
Exactly. The book gives this great example of this entrepreneur, Adam.
Adam
Who at first really resisted this whole idea.
is changing his style.
He thought it was inauthentic.
Like manipulative.
Yeah, but then he saw how much it changed his interactions.
Yeah.
He was suddenly able to connect with people.
Who he couldn't before.
Exactly. Just by shifting his approach.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. And honestly, we already do this all the time, right?
Yeah, like I don't talk to my boss the same way I talk to my friends.
Exactly. This is just about doing it consciously.
Like strategically.
Yes. And the more you understand these colors,
Yeah.
the more naturally you'll start to do it.
Without even thinking about it.
Right. It'll just become second nature.
Okay, so we've got the colors down. We've got this idea of adapting our frequency.
Yeah.
But let's get real world here.
Okay.
How does this actually play out? Like, how do we deal with conflict, deliver bad news, or manage a team with all these different colors?
That's where the book gets really practical.
Okay, Kate.
But first, I think we need to take a step back
Okay.
and look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
This book uses color, but the idea of like categorizing personality types,
Yeah.
it's been around for centuries.
You mentioned some ancient personality systems earlier.
I did.
Like, how do those connect to the color system? That
Yeah.
blows my mind.
Let's explore that next and see what we can learn from those ancient ideas. So we were talking about how putting people into categories like personality types.
Right, like it's been around forever.
Yeah, way before this book with its colors.
You mentioned Hippocrates and even the Aztecs.
I did.
It's hard to imagine that ancient civilizations were thinking about personality in ways that still make sense today.
I know, it's pretty wild, right? So Hippocrates.
That's the ancient Greek physician.
Exactly. He believed that our temperament, like our basic personality, was determined by the balance of 4 bodily fluids.
Okay, I vaguely remember learning about that, but remind me, what were they?
Blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm.
Okay, and each of these was connected to specific personality traits.
That's right. For example, the sanguine type, which was associated with blood.
Blood, okay.
They were described as cheerful, optimistic, sociable.
Wait a minute, that sounds really familiar.
Does it?
It's like our yellows.
It is, isn't it? Always upbeat, energetic, the life of the party.
Totally. What about the choleric type?
They were linked to yellow bile, and they were known for being fiery, passionate, quick to anger.
Okay, definitely some red vibes there.
Right.
What about melancholic? They sound a bit more serious.
They were associated with black bile, and they were described as thoughtful, analytical, prone to sadness.
That's got to be our blue right. Always thinking things through, focused on the details, maybe a little prone to overthinking.
Sounds like it. And lastly, we have the phlegmatic type.
Okay, the last one.
This one was linked to phlegm, and they were known for being calm, relaxed, slow to react.
That's totally a green, wouldn't you say? Peaceful, easygoing, always trying to keep things harmonious.
Absolutely. So even thousands of years ago, people were trying to figure out these basic differences in how we are.
It makes you wonder if these personality patterns are like built into us somehow.
It really does.
It's like something we've been trying to understand since the dawn of time.
I love that idea.
It's mind-blowing to think about how these ancient ideas, connect to how we think about personality today.
It's all connected.
It's like we're all part of this long conversation about who we are and why we act the way we do.
I love that. A long conversation.
But let's bring it back to the book.
Okay.
How can we actually use these insights in our own lives?
Great point. Now that we have this historical context, let's look at some specific situations where understanding these color types can really help.
Okay. Like you mentioned before, dealing with conflict, delivering bad news, managing a team with all these different colors.
All those tricky situations.
Yeah, let's start with conflict. Because let's face it. It's going to happen.
It's inevitable in any relationship, work, personal, anywhere.
So how can understanding these personality types help us,
navigate those choppy waters?
Right, exactly.
One of the most important things is to recognize that each color reacts to conflict differently.
Okay.
A red, for example, they might see conflict as a challenge.
Oh, interesting.
A chance to assert their dominance, come out on top.
So would a direct confrontation be the best way to deal with a red then? Just lay it all out there.
It can work, but you have to be ready for a strong response.
Okay, they're not going to back down.
Not at all. But reds do respect strength and decisiveness.
Oh.
So if you challenge a red, do it with confidence.
And a clear goal in mind.
Absolutely. What about a yellow? How do you think they react to conflict?
Well, yellows, they're so about positivity and connection. I'd imagine they try to avoid conflict at all costs.
You would be right. They see it as a threat to their relationships and their optimistic outlook.
Okay.
So they might try to smooth things over, change the subject, or even deny that there's a problem at all.
That makes sense. They want to keep things light.
They do. So how do you address conflict with a yellow without making them feel attacked or shut down?
That's a good question.
I think the key is empathy.
Okay.
And focusing on the relationship instead of confronting them directly. Try framing the issue as something you can solve together.
Oh, a shared problem.
Exactly. And emphasize the positive outcomes that could come from resolving it.
So instead of saying, you messed this up, you might say, hey, it seems like we had a little miscommunication. How can we make sure this doesn't happen again?
Perfect example. Focus on collaboration.
And be prepared for a lot of talking, right?
Yellows process their emotions verbally, so there will be words.
Okay, so we've got strategies for reds and yellows. What about greens? We talked about how much they value harmony and stability.
Right.
How does that play out in a conflict?
Greens will try to avoid conflict, just like yellows.
Okay.
But their approach is more about keeping the peace.
Not necessarily keeping up appearances.
Right. They might agree to things they don't actually want.
Or just not say anything.
Exactly. They'll suppress their own feelings to avoid rocking the boat.
So how do you get a green to open up and express what they really feel?
That's the challenge, isn't it?
It is. How do you address the issue without putting them on the spot?
Patience is key. And reassurance. Greens need to feel safe before they'll open up, so start by acknowledging their need for harmony.
Okay.
And assure them that you value their perspective.
You might say something like, I know you don't like conflict, and I appreciate that you always try to keep things peaceful, but I also want to make sure you feel comfortable saying what you really think, even if it's different from what I think.
Exactly. And be ready to really listen, validate their feelings, even if you don't agree with them.
That makes sense. And what about blues? They're the analytical ones, all about the details. How do they typically handle conflict?
Blues approach conflict logically. Focusing on facts and solutions, they'll try to detach emotionally
Take the feelings out of it.
Exactly. Analyze the situation objectively, but they can also get stuck in their heads.
Oh, yeah.
Overthinking every possible scenario, and that can make it hard to make a decision.
So how do you have a productive conversation with a blue without getting lost in the weeds or triggering their overthinking?
First, be prepared with data and logic. Blues won't be swayed by emotions or opinions.
Get out the facts.
You do. Present your case clearly, concisely, and be open to hearing their perspective, which will probably be well-researched and reasoned.
So it's like presenting a case in court.
It can feel that way sometimes, but remember, blues want a fair and logical resolution.
Okay, so we've got some strategies for conflict with each color, but what about delivering bad news? That's another one that's always tough.
It is, but understanding those personality types can make a big difference in how the message is received.
Okay, let's explore that next and see how we can use this knowledge to, deliver those difficult messages in a way that's a little easier for everyone.
So we were talking about delivering bad news.
Oh, yeah, one of those conversations nobody likes.
I know, right? It feels like no matter how you do it, you're going to end up hurting someone's feelings or, causing a big upset.
It's definitely tough.
It is.
But I think understanding how different personality types react to bad news.
It can really help us make those conversations a little less stressful.
Less stressful. Okay, I'm all for that.
For everyone involved, right?
Yeah, for sure. So let's go back to our colors.
Okay.
How would a red typically respond to bad news?
Well, reds are all about action and results.
Right.
So they'll want the bottom line,
Okay.
and then what steps need to be taken to fix it.
So they're less focused on, the emotional fallout?
Yeah, they're more interested in solutions.
So with a red, it's best to just be direct, concise, and skip the sugarcoating.
Exactly. Don't waste their time with a lot of emotional stuff.
Just get straight to the point.
Yes, give them the facts.
Okay.
Outline the consequences and present your solution.
Okay, that makes sense. What about a yellow?
Ah, the yellows.
They're so enthusiastic and optimistic.
They are.
It feels like they always see the glass half full.
They do. How do you break bad news to someone like that?
Right.
Well, yellows can be surprisingly resilient.
Really?
Yeah, but they do need to process their emotions verbally.
Okay, so they're going to talk about it.
They're going to talk, so be prepared for that.
Okay, and let them just vent.
Let them vent, yeah, let them get those initial frustrations out.
So don't try to, force them to look on the bright side right away.
No, not right away.
Okay.
Let them express their feelings, and then you can gently guide the conversation towards a more positive path forward.
Okay, I see, acknowledging their feelings, but then helping them see maybe the opportunities that might come out of this situation.
Exactly, any silver linings.
So you might say something like, I know this is a setback, but it also gives us a chance to try a new approach.
Perfect. And remember, connection is so important for yellows.
Okay.
So make sure they feel supported and heard throughout the conversation.
Okay, that's good advice. What about greens?
Greens, they're so sensitive.
Yeah, and conflict averse.
They don't like anything upsetting the harmony.
It feels like I'm walking on eggshells when I have to give them bad news.
I know what you mean. With greens, the focus should be on reassurance and minimizing disruption.
I'm not trying to rock their world.
Right. Deliver the news gently.
Okay.
And emphasize that you're there to support them.
So acknowledge their feelings, validate their concerns, and avoid being too blunt or critical.
Exactly. Greens need to feel safe and secure.
Okay.
So emphasize stability and continuity.
Even though things are changing, I'm still there for them.
That's it. And lastly, we have the blues.
The blues, the analytical ones who love to break everything down.
They do. So be prepared to give them all the information.
Okay. All the beginning.
What happened, why it happened, and what it all means.
So don't try to gloss over anything or rush through the explanation.
No glossing over.
Give them all facts.
All the facts and figures, and be prepared to answer their questions.
Okay, so be patient and thorough.
Very patient. Blues need time to process everything.
Right. They're not going to give you an answer right away.
Not likely. They need to think it through.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've talked about conflict, delivering bad news.
Two of the big ones.
I know, but what about managing a team with all these different colors? That sounds like a lot.
It can be, but it's also really rewarding when you learn how to use those different strengths.
Okay, I see.
The key is to understand that each color brings something unique.
Okay. Like a puzzle.
Kinda. You've got your reds driving the action.
Yeah.
Yellows keeping everyone motivated.
Greens creating that harmony.
In blues, making sure everything is accurate and detailed.
Right. It's like a well-oiled machine if you can get them all working together.
Exactly. The challenge is creating an environment where those different energies can actually work together.
So how do you do that?
It might involve setting very clear expectations.
Okay, so everyone knows what's expected.
Right, and establishing communication protocols that work for everyone.
So, like, how we're going to communicate as a team.
That's it, and give each color opportunities to shine.
In their own way.
Yeah, the book talks about how some colors naturally complement each other.
Like yellows and greens.
Perfect example, they both value relationships and harmony.
Right, but you still need a mix of all the colors.
You do to have a balanced approach.
Like if you only had reds.
Oh, that would be intense.
Right.
Yeah, chaos, probably.
The book had that funny story about a team building exercise where they divided people up by color.
Oh, yeah, that one.
And it was a disaster.
It was. The red team just charged ahead without reading the instructions.
Oh my gosh.
The blue team got totally lost in the details.
And the yellows.
They were mostly socializing.
Classic.
It's a funny story, but it shows how important it is to understand those dynamics.
Yeah, and create a structure that lets each color contribute.
Exactly. And that brings us back to adaptation.
Okay, being flexible.
The best leaders are the ones who can adjust their style to connect with everyone.
So it's not about forcing everyone to be the same.
No, it's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued and understood.
And can be themselves.
That's it. And you know, this brings us to another important point, written communication.
Oh, that's a good one. So much of how we communicate these days is through email, text,
Social media, all of it.
How do we even pick up on those color cues in writing?
Well, think about the email you might get from a red boss.
Were you?
Short, to the point, action items.
Whereas a blue colleague might send you a super detailed email.
Oh, yeah, with bullet points, charts, the whole thing.
And a yellow.
Probably a long, rambling email, lots of emojis.
And a greens email.
Overly polite, maybe a little apologetic.
So just like in person, we need to adapt our writing style.
Absolutely. If you're emailing a red CEO, keep it short and sweet. Focus on the key points.
And for a blue, make sure you have all the data and present it logically.
Exactly. Tailoring your message to the color you're communicating with.
This is so helpful. I'm already thinking about how I can use this in my own life.
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. Making it practical.
This book gives us a way to understand those behaviors that drive us crazy.
Yeah. And strategies for communicating better with all kinds of people. This has been an amazing deep dive. We've covered so much.
We have, from those 4 color-coded personalities.
All those little details of how to actually communicate.
Conflict, stress, even the history of these ideas.
And real-world examples.
Yeah, connecting ancient wisdom to modern problems.
I know, it's been a wild ride, but hopefully you're feeling a lot less like you're surrounded by idiots.
And a lot more equipped to understand the people around you.
Right, because that's the goal.
Yeah.
Right, to feel more connected, less frustrated.
I think so.
Now, as we wrap up, we want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
Think about the people in your life, your colleagues, your friends, your family.
Yeah.
Can you start to see them through this color lens?
Can you spot those patterns?
Yeah, those communication styles, those stress triggers.
And most importantly, can you use this knowledge to actually communicate better?
Build stronger relationships.
And maybe, just maybe, feel a little less annoyed by the people who see the world differently.
Because they're not trying to be difficult.
Maybe they just speak a different language.
It's a great way to put it.
It's all about understanding.
So go out there and start decoding the world around you. You might be surprised at how much smoother those interactions become.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'd love to hear what you think, so share your experiences with us.
We'll be back with another deep dive soon. So until then, keep learning, keep connecting.